from my experience, the genesis of identity and leadership is discovered in the influence your father had on you.
What is up, friends? Rob here, and I'm back with a brand new Spitting Fire Leadership podcast for all of you. And today I am with Mr. Bill Buckley. Bill, will you say what's up to everyone just real quickly?
Hey, good morning, everybody. Glad to be with you.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited today about what you're going to share, some fire you're going to spit for, so to speak. But before we dive into that, I want to remind you guys of why I do this podcast, why I interview leaders like Bill in different arenas and different spaces. It's because I live by this mantra that we were all created on purpose for a purpose. And I pray that something that we talk about today divinely inspires you to start living on purpose in 2022. Also, I pray that this puts fresh wind in your sails. I know that life can be a struggle, that life can be tough, and I pray that something we talk about today will compel you to go one more day and go, isn't it about time that I start living intentionally and deliberately and bringing my Creator glory in everything that I do in my life. So, Bill, I'm so excited that you're with us today, and I always like to start the podcast off this way. Will you give us a 30,000 foot view of your story, maybe a little bit of background, some of the transition time up to what you're doing today?
Sure. If I get too long, just call a timeout on me. I grew up here in Mississippi, farm boy. My parents' only core value was relentless work. And I'm so grateful for that deposit in my life, because I'm not the smartest or the sharpest person on the block, but I guarantee you I can work as hard as you can. And that really has been great for me. I'm grateful for that. I grew up loving football, got into football very early. 7th grade football was my first experience, and fell in love with that game. It fit me. And I was able to be at a school, Starkville High School in northern Mississippi there, that had a great program, and had some great coaches and a lot of people pouring into me to help me be a football player and to be have success. So I was signed by Mississippi State. I played at Mississippi State University, played football there. I was a wide receiver. I was drafted by the New York Jets, was injured early in spring, in summer camp, and never was able to come back from that injury. And so my career ended there. So when your whole identity is in your what you do, then you don't know who you are. And that was kind of it. So I wandered in the wilderness for about 7 years, and then met a beautiful woman named Mary Louise Parker, and she became my wife, and we started a life together, and actually became Christians a few years after we were married, and the Lord has been good to lead us and give us success. I've been with a Fellowship of Christian Athletes now for almost 30 years. And if you don't know about FCA, we work with coaches and athletes, helping them to find purpose in life and direction in life.
Yeah, I want to go back to something you said real quickly, because I've been guilty of, and I think many people have been guilty of fall into the trap, is maybe a better way to say it, of your identity tied to what you do.
Yeah.
Found on that, and maybe something, some tips or something just real practical, how you begin to break out of that and begin to discover who you are outside of that.
Yeah, well, I think that really is a heart issue, Rob. I really do. And that's part of my story in God, is that, it just knowing that I'm loved without measuring my performance. I think us guys, we measure our performance. And it's nothing wrong with measuring performance, but that can't be our identity. That just cannot if we're not sure of who we are outside of what we do, we'll never have a healthy self-esteem or the encouragement we need on the inside to be true to our calling and our purpose.
And while we're in there, let's segue into this real quickly. How does the Christian faith, I'll speak some Christianese here just for a second. How does the love of the Father, that's how God is referenced, play into that?
That's really an important question right there. Well, let me just start with, I've worked with football players in one way or another, either as a coach or a life skills coach or chaplain. For a bunch of years, I was with Dan Mullen at Mississippi State University. I was with Steve Campbell at Gulf Coast Community College. I was with Norman Joseph at Mississippi College. And I want to ask you, what would you think is the number one reason football players find little or no success after their playing days are over? I mean, I'm sorry, say again?
Everything they do, they just so used to performing in football that everything is tied to that. They don't know what else to do.
That's right. And the number one thing that I discover with kids who struggle is they have no history or a bad history with their father. That element, that key component of growing up, they missed. And most of the interaction they have with adult men in their culture is confrontational. It's not loving. And so, from my experience, the genesis of identity and leadership is discovered in the influence your father had on you. We are all marked in healthy or unhealthy ways by that key relationship in our lives. When our history with dad is intimate and consistent and kind, then we possess a solid foundation for leadership. And the key element in that equation is empowerment. And I define empowerment by this. Empowerment is a place of security and peace, a place of where you can build confidence and courage, the influence of patience and kindness. And all of these things give the gift of hope. And I believe those are primary tasks of the Father. We carry both the greatness and the brokenness of our fathers, but it's up to us what we do with that. Amen.
I totally agree with that. And just being fully transparent is, I struggled with that because I didn't grow up with a father. My mom was a single mom. I became the father of the house, if you will, at 8 years old, 9 years old, siblings.
Wow.
It hurt me when I became a father, just because my mom was this very militant, I kind of tease when I say this, but my mom's about 4'11" on a good day. We got Indiana Jones whipped when we were kids. There was no timeout. You just got the Indiana Jones whipping from the belt. And I understood why she had to be that way, because she had me when she was 17, my brother when she was 15. But I became very hard and militant like that as well. Mm. My first child, my daughter, kind of got the brunt of that. I lightened up a little child, and now my 13-year-old, they say I spoil him, and they would have never got away with that. When he was one of the first children to be born, and so God has really helped me in that area. What if there's someone watching today, Bill, and they're a father and they're listening to this when this drops in a few weeks, and they just feel like a failure. They feel like they've blown it, but it's not too late. Like you said, it's up to us what we do with that. what practical steps could they make today as being that father leader of the home to begin to empower their kids?
I think the difference for me, Rob, was when I was able, and I had help with this. My wife was very helpful in this, what I'm about to say, and also some key people that I knew in my life. I didn't count them as friends at the time. They were basically an annoyance to me because they spoke the truth to me, but they were the key. And I think it's stopping and evaluating your life, being honest about your brokenness. And I think that was the beginning place for me. And that's not a fun thing to do. It's not a fun thing to look inside and say, dang, I'm broken. But I can promise you this, you're in good company, because we're all broken. I don't care who you see or who you meet on the street or who you think's got it all together, but everybody is broken. And the beauty of a good father, and I think this is the other thing for me, Rob, and you already said it, and that is having a real, legitimate, accurate view of who God the Father is. And he's a good father. Did you know in the Bible, the word father is listed 1,718 times? I think that's significant. I think it's the great father of all of us saying, hey, this is important. And I have a couple of favorite passages that I love that remind me. Romans 2:4 is really beautiful. It says, or do you think lightly of the riches of the kindness and tolerance and patience, not knowing that it's the kindness of God that leads you to repentance? And that word repentance, we think of it in a negative way, but it really means to be transformed. That's the root meaning of repentance, is to be transformed. It's not an angry God shaking a finger in your face. It's him coming close in his heart to love you and see you transformed and to be all God called you to be. And then I love 1 Peter 2:19 that says, but you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for God's own possession, so that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. That is so beautiful and so good and so strong.
And I want to stop here just for a second, Bill. I'm going to look into the camera here. And whenever you're watching this, or now we have the audio format, so that link is in the video description. If that's more of your flavor to listen to it on the Apple or Spotify. Maybe God is speaking to you right now in this moment, and maybe you just need to pull over. If you're, listening to this at home, you need to push. You need to stop. I need you. My life. I say it this way: maybe today is the day that you give all the keys to the kingdom to him. Just be broken. Maybe for some of us, it's just that ugly crying, right? We just cry and let it all out and go, God, heal me, do a work in me. This is what Bill is talking about. And Bill, I want to ask this because I am someone, as we talked before, we pushed record. I believe I live from a place of fully loved and fully accepted by the Father. I wake up every day and believe all of heaven cheering me on, to do the will of the Father in every area of my life. But why does the church struggle with this concept? Because, being in ministry for over 20 years myself, I run into a lot of people that when you preach that kindness and the love of the Father, somehow they think you're discounting sin. Like there can't be the kindness of the Father and not highlight this over here. It's almost like they're anti each other. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, that is such a critical battle there. I feel like, I feel like it's our modern definition of love, or there's so many definitions for love out there. I mean, if you talk to 100 different people on the street today, you might get 100 different definitions of what love is. And so when we talk about Jesus Christ and the God and the Father of the faith of Christianity, we're talking about a specific kind of love. And we have to know what that means in order to, if we're going to accept or reject, we need to know what that means. And love it's the love of the Father in Christ is fully accepting. We can't bring any of our good works or any good thing we do to the cross of Christ. It's all what he did. So there's great freedom in doing that. He understands our sin, understands our brokenness, and forgives us. And we can dump all our junk there forever. And he accepts us and loves us and pours it into us. But then, that's not the freedom for us to go and do stupid things. We now have the freedom to walk as he walked, in obedience to the Father. And I think this is where religion comes in. Religion has no voice of God. It's the voice of man. But faith in Christ, when we are submitted to him and full of his Spirit, and we're going to have the voice of God. We can hear from him. We can learn from him through the scriptures, through the Bible, through other people, through teachers. And he has a voice that he wants to lead us and guide us. And it's a comforting, good voice, but it's not without conviction.
No, I totally agree. And I always tell people this, that the love of the Father, and listen, if you're watching today, I understand you may not be a faith-based person or a Christian. We get that, but don't tune us out, because I believe there's something here for you as well. But I teach that the love of the Father is transforming, right? His kindness actually transforms you. It empowers you to say no to what I call those lesser loves and fully receive that love that he has for you, which is his perfect love, right? And so I definitely love what you're saying there. But, many times, and this working with athletes, and if you've done ministry as I've done, you run into a lot of people, even myself included, who didn't have a good father.
Yep.
And we put that on God the Father. So I don't think it's a coincidence, like you said, over 1,000 times in Scripture, that God is referenced as the Father, because he knew that sin would makes broken people, right? That sin has affected everything. And the Father model, like you were talking about in the beginning, makes a huge difference on how people truly live this life. What is one way that somebody could just take a next step or break through, if you will, to saying, what, I didn't have a good father situation, but I'm not going to put that on God the Father? Can you give an action step that somebody can take right now to go, hey, break out of that and run to the Father?
Yeah. Well, that's a good way to say it. Break out of yourself and run to the Father. That's what I did only when I thought I had no other options. I hate to admit that, but that's the way it happened for me. I ran out of all options, and my life was a wreck. And so I ran to him because I knew I was so broken. And again, that's just an awareness of who you really are and what's really going on in your heart. And I think people don't realize that the Lord, the Father, is relentlessly pursuing you. I mean, he's coming after you with everything he's got. And you may say, "Oh, well, I don't feel that." Well, get in tune. I guarantee you, if you will stop your life, and the word is surrender. I mean, you're not going to know. I mean, he's not going to come past your unsurrendered defenses. He's going to honor you enough that he's not going to make you a robot that has to love him. You're going to have to choose that through surrender. And I think that was a key changing point in my life, was a place of, I'm giving it up. I can't do this anymore.
I know you talk a lot about on Facebook, the intimacy of the Father. I told you I kind of wanted to dive into this today. The love of the Father, because I believe it's so just overlooked, or when it's preached, it's just surface level a lot of times. But intimacy with the Father, I see you talk a little bit about that in some of your writings. What does that mean? Because not only do people need to have a break out of that natural depiction of a father, if it was, maybe their father was in their lives, but he wasn't present, or maybe they didn't have a father, they break out of that. But how do they begin to discover what it means to be intimate with the Father? And what does that word even mean?
Well, that's, I think intimacy, it wasn't me, but someone said this, that it's into me he sees. Intimacy, into me he sees. And we know that God is sovereign, and he already sees inside of us. He knows everything about us. But again, I think that in his great love, he always gives us a choice. He is sovereign, and his will is going to eventually be done in the earth. But he's giving mankind, and he's done this generation after generation, of giving everything he had, including his own son, to people in order to love them. And consistently, humankind has rejected him. But he's coming again. He's coming in the form of Rob Sevilla. He's coming in the form of so many out there who are proclaiming his name and calling people to have a relationship with him. And so, intimacy to me, it's all wrapped up in that our free will. I can't be forced to love somebody. That has got to be a choice, or it's no longer love. And if he's the God of love, that choice is always going to be there. And he is not a mean-spirited God somewhere on the other side of heaven, looking down saying, those suckers, I hope they get it right today. No, he sent his Holy Spirit to us to guide us into all truth. And so every day he's wooing us and calling us. My question is, do you have eyes to see and ears to hear? And I think, again, when we get desperate, I love that word desperation. It's not a bad word. It's a good word, that I'm so desperate. I'm so hungry. When you look at the people of great faith in the Bible, they were all desperate and hungry for God. As in football, we say hungry. And
I love what you're saying. I've heard it said this way, that a lot of times, I think this is where that performance dynamic comes in. A lot of times we may never just voice it, but we actually live this way. Many Christians, myself included, I have fallen into this trap, that somehow God is in love with some future version of us, right? Prays more, the one who studies the Bible more, the one who does the, who's the good Christian, the poster child, the one who doesn't cuss and doesn't drink and doesn't, do all these other things. When in reality, what you said is God is pursuing them now, and he loves them right now. And if they could,
right.
It's knowing that empowers them, that changes the want tos, right? Gospel, the want tos. And I was thinking of a song by a worship leader named Misty Edwards. And one of my favorite songs, it wrecks me every time I put it on. And I send it to people all the time that are just struggling with the identity and how can God love them. And the whole song was, I knew what I was getting into when I first called you. Blows my mind that this sovereign God that you're talking about who's all-knowing, omniscient, omnipotent, all-powerful, omnipresent, he's everywhere, knows us, but yet still relentlessly pursues us and says, I want that person and I want to use them for my glory. And that's really what you're talking about today. I love what you're saying, the love of the Father. And we may circle back around to that, but going back to the intro, being a big part of your life, and obviously this is a leadership podcast, what is one leadership principle or trait that football has taught you that you live yourself today, but you also lead others from?
Well, I think one of the big words that I used when I was coaching and that I was taught when I was playing is that word relentless. And I love that word, relentless. I think it speaks to who I am. I think it speaks to who great athletes are and great leaders are. But the full meaning of relentless is not just about sweat. It's not just about working harder than everybody else. That's part of it. I mean, a team, if you're going to be better than somebody, you got to outwork them. There's no question about that. But to me, relentless carries the weight of so many other qualities that we can possess to be people of passion. And the Bible talks clearly and about relentless love. And I think the leaders that have meant so much to my life, one of the key guys that really helped me to have a successful college career was a coach named Bob Tyler. And Bob Tyler really wanted to win. He was relentless. But when he came in, there were several Mississippi State figures that wanted to get rid of me because I was no poster boy. I was rough. I was trouble. And they told him, he's only going to be trouble. You need to get him out of here. Well, Bob relentlessly defended me, didn't get rid of me, and the rest is history. That relentless love and belief in me set the course for the rest of my life. To me, that's relentless.
And don't you think that's the way the Father is with us in Jesus, right? Because the Bible refers to Jesus as our great advocate, that he's always the enemy, Satan, who's the great accuser, that relentless defense of us, and knowing that, or when we come to know that, it really empowers us, right?
Amen. It's who he is.
I definitely love that. Let me ask you this, because I was going through some of your writings on Facebook, and man, you have a gift and just the way you articulate things, and just very encouraging, and was love reading some of this. And one of the things that you said, and I made a note here, you were very transparent in talking about burnout, right? And I think a lot of leaders don't realize when they are burned out. And a lot of times, if you say that as a leader, people think that you're being weak. People, just come on, suck it up, or just kind of power through it. And I just want to be transparent here. I was one of those guys who had that mentality. I tried to power through it, but actually it broke me. I was in shambles. I loved God, but I was just so sucked dry. But all I knew was just to power through it. By nature, I'm this D personality, this high D personality who just powers through everything. Can you talk about that? Because you talked about burnout. And one of the things you said in your post, you said, stop giving away your life to anything, anybody, in any time. Will you expound on that? Because maybe there's some leaders watching this today that maybe they don't realize they're in burnout, or maybe they do, and they just don't know how to break out of that cycle.
Yeah, well, Rob, I think the way we define a great leader today, especially in the business world, is that he he's going to give it all the time to everybody. I mean, he's relentless in giving and working. And I think our American culture, the definition of success is doing what my dad did. My dad was, he worked until he was 68 years old. I think he retired at 68, or maybe it was 70. I can't remember, but he gave everything he had all the time. My mom did the same thing. And I could see it in my mom a little bit more. When my mom retired, she went and sat down and never got back up. She had nothing else to offer, nothing, for the rest of her life. I just believe there are a lot of men out there, especially, and women too, I'm sure, that we have been taught and conditioned that that's what you got to do in corporate America. That's what you have to do in our culture. You got to give it all. And it never leads to health. So you have to make some tough decisions. I couldn't make those, but my leaders made them for me. About a year ago, it was mandated by my immediate supervisors that I not work for an entire month. And thank the Lord, I was able to be paid my normal salary, but they dared me to do any work with FCA. Rob, I think it saved my life and the rest of whatever God has for me. And I guarantee you, there are people out there right now, you're already burned out, or you're about to be, or you were at some point in your life. And my question is, how do you get back to full health? And that is a topic maybe for another time, but please consider that. And here's what I'm learned too, that except for those two guys in my life, everybody else was loving what they got from me. And that fed my ego and made me not want to stop as well. So it wasn't all unselfish giving. It was like, this is feeding me, man. And it just is a bad scenario that can lead to all kinds of physical and emotional problems.
No, and I love what you're saying. And because my context is a lot of ministry as a former church planner, pastor, it's very much like that even in the church, that pastors,
yep,
consumers or takers, both in the secular world and in the church, right? And I'm not trying to be watching this today or listening to this. This is not a church hating segment. This is just the reality of where we're at. Both natural world and in the church world. And I found myself just giving, people just consuming. I couldn't say no, because you get this kind of perverted sense that it's your responsibility. You're supposed to be doing this. But then, like what you said, I think is a very crucial point. Somewhere down the line, it becomes a little bit narcissistic or egotistical or prideful. That goes back to the very beginning, what you were saying. We begin as ministers to find our identity tied to that, right? Great sermon, pastor, or, where would I be without this ministry? And you don't start off that way, but it's like we gravitate towards that, and it turns you out. I found myself at a place where I was frustrated. I found myself at a place where David in Psalm 51 talks about the joy of his salvation. I didn't have that anymore.
Yeah.
Over the past year or so, where it's said that a lot of ministers, and just a lot of people, but speaking in ministry, they sacrifice doing for God or activity for God on the altar of being with God.
That's good.
I found myself doing, activity.
Yeah.
That intimacy, the soaking in that love of the Father that you talked about. Real quickly, just because I believe in being practical, I believe in just giving the next step before we move on. What is the next step right now? Maybe somebody's watching this or listening to this. What is something they can do right now to begin that journey, that out of that wilderness, if you will?
Yeah. Well, listen to your spouse, especially your wife. She's going to speak the truth to you above everybody else, probably. I know my wife does. Several weeks ago, she was trying to get me on the calendar for something, and we were looking out to 10 to 14 days, and I was shaking my head, and she looked at me and she said, Bill, you are not that important. I was like, it was like, she's right. And I think if your phone controls you, you will never be healthy. I think the biggest challenge for most of us is that cell phone, is our mobile phones. And if we can't, we have to learn to not even look at our phones. And I think most people that, look at people in restaurants or when they're out together as husband and wives, and, they can't get away from their phone. And that is not healthy. That is the sign of immaturity. I'm going to tell you. And so if you do that, then I'm going to get in your face right now and say, what is that? It's a need for you to be needed, and you want all that. But I tell you, you can't be on your phone. I get text messages from people at 2 a.m. in the morning, and they're scrolling their phones, and they're on that phone instead of sleeping. It is such a problem. So I think you got to have a plan. You got to get convicted about your phone.
Would you agree with this too? Because you were talking about the need to be needed, because that's something we all have to fight, whether you're in ministry or in the business world or whatever arena you're in. But isn't it true? And this is what I have found for myself, and I'd love to hear you speak to this. That I have found that the more I begin to grasp this truth of being fully loved and fully accepted by the Father, frees me at a deeper level from the need to want to be needed. You've seen that in your own life as you have really just been diving deep into what it means to be loved by the Father and relentlessly pursued by Him?
Yeah, I think that's so powerful. What's really transformed and been transformed in my life is my time with God. It used to be I would always have a Bible reading plan that somebody else designed for me, probably, or I stole from somewhere. And a Bible reading plan, I would read some verses, and I would take a few notes, and I would pray for the day, and then I would go about my business. I have learned, and this has come from my wife more than anyone else, I've learned what it means to sit and to wait and to be in the presence of the Lord. And that is the most beautiful, sometimes the most scary place on earth. And it's scary because when we really start waiting on Him and His presence, we're becoming more and more aware of His presence in the room. It's startling at first, but it's like you said, He's not out to whip us or beat us. He's out to just hug us and to comfort us and to draw us close to Him. But that doesn't just happen by itself. I believe we have to be intentional. You can't make your kids draw close to you, but when they do, you're going to love them and hug them and kiss them and speak good things to them. And I feel like my time with the Lord, that's pretty much the way it is now. I will just wait on Him and meditate and think and just talk to Him from my heart without any religious jargon, but just being real.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying there. And I was reading one of your posts, and it really stuck out to me because you talked about being in right relationship with God, that a lot of people have this idea that it's about perfection, but you use the word position. Would you expound on that, what that means?
Well, Jesus, because of what He did, You know, sin is a really big deal. It really is. So I'm not going to minimize that. But Jesus took care of it. He took care of it at the cross so that we wouldn't have to keep taking care of it. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't ask the Lord to forgive us for things we've done. And that, you know, that's part of a good relationship with him. But I don't approach the Lord anymore as an angry, supernatural presence. He is a satisfied with the cross of Christ, loving presence. And it's dramatic how that changes what I'm feeling in the room. And we can't do that for anybody. I don't know if we can put that on a piece of paper or in a, you know, we just have to call people to pursue the Lord like he's pursuing us, and just go and be with him, and without any agendas.
And I was also reading one thing that you had posted about knowing the truth, that knowing the truth is really about being madly in love with God. You know, it blows my mind how many people think that heaven is going to be full of people that were afraid to go to hell. I've always taught this because I believe it's scripture and speaking of the love of the Father, that heaven is not afraid, it's not full of people that are afraid to go into hell. Heaven is full of people that were madly in love with Jesus.
Mm.
Kind of what you were saying in that post that you posted about being madly in love with God, but expound on that just for a minute.
Yeah. I think, you know, it's a challenge to talk about. For me, I'm still learning the language that I want to use when I talk about on one side, there's the conviction of that my life is wrong. And that's not a bad thing. That's a healthy thing. And there's a so-called gospel out there that says, well, no matter what you do, no matter who you are, no matter what the direction of your life, God accepts you and loves you and you're good. Well, that's not the gospel. The Lord doesn't want to leave us in the condition that he found us. He wants us to be all we were called to be. And he has lined out for us the truths that make wholeness. And they're in the Bible. They're in the written word. And I think that one reason we miss God's Rhema word, that's Rhema, that means the right now voice speaking. The reason we miss the voice of God, religion makes us want to just read words. Relationship makes us want to hear the voice of the Lord in everything we read. And every word in the Bible is pregnant with his voice. And you can read all day long. I know people who've read the entire Bible through more than once, and they still reject Jesus Christ and God the Father. They never heard the voice of the one who loves.
So what if somebody all their life, you know, because we live in the Bible Belt, and you know, we're religious, we're obese on religion, if you will. How does somebody begin to break out of that? Someone who's just religious into discovering this relationship thing. For me, it was probably 15, 18 years ago where God used this mentor, who's a mentor of mine in the faith, and he's went on to heaven now, but God used him to really bring me out of that Egypt of religion, if you will, into the promised land of relationship, if I can use that Christianese analogy there. But how does someone break out of that? Maybe they're listening or watching this today and they know a lot about God, but they don't know God. How does someone begin to break out of that?
Well, and I know you're not saying this, but there's no formula. If you are not at a place of desperation, that you recognize the desperation in your own heart and spirit, then you're not going to discover him. And you look at the people who in the word, David, I love King David. He's just so beautiful in his relationship, but that guy was running from all of his enemies, and he got desperate for the Lord, and that created a hunger for God in him, and God is drawn to that hunger and desperation. And so we've got to be honest about those things. I mean, I ask people all the time, what did you do with your desperation? And, we comfort desperation in 1,000 different ways, with drugs, coffee, alcohol, food, all kinds of religious work. But you can't comfort desperation. You have to admit it and bring it to God, so that hunger for him will grow in us.
No, I definitely love that. And whether you're watching this or listening to this today, I'm going to give you 2 words. I think it's very simplistic. It's draw near. Desperation that we begin to draw.
Amen.
Still in the Old Testament, a lot of us, too, even today, we're only half-heartedly seeking. What Bill is talking about today is when you get to that place, because I've been there many times, like in a lot of cases, I'm hard-headed, he's still working on me by his grace, and I'm thankful for that. But a lot of it today, maybe people watching this today, you need to draw near with everything.
Amen.
You will seek him with your full heart. You'll find him. This is the desperation.
Amen.
About. And I mean, I got tons of more stuff that we could talk about, but I know that we're on a time schedule here today, Bill. And I want to ask you something. I ask this to every person that comes on the podcast. And I may know the word already because you talked about it early on, but if there was one word that you would use to describe yourself, what would that one word be?
To describe myself? I think hungry.
So how has hungry contributed, or being hungry, in that state of being hungry, how has that contributed to what you're doing now with FCA and just the way that you've been able to lead others?
Well, I think one of the things that I think I was born hungry. I really do. I think it was a gift that God put in me that every athlete has got to have. I mean, speed, strength, skill, all that is so important. But if you're not hungry, I don't want you on my team. And I think that came to me naturally, supernaturally, if I might say. I mean, I know the Lord gifted me in that way. And I think once my hunger got focused on the Lord, it became, instead of an insatiable thing, it became a guiding principle. And that has made all the difference. And I want to stay hungry. I don't ever want to, you don't graduate from God. You don't retire from the Lord. We stay hungry until the day we go be with him. And to me, that's the one word that's probably sticks out.
Sure. Where can we find you online? Are you on Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram?
I'm on Facebook. Yeah. I'm not on the other ones. I'm just on Facebook. I'm old school. I'm just too lazy to do those other things.
Gotcha. So as we wrap up today, what if, we talked about the love of the Father. We've talked about burnout. We've talked about this intimacy and being madly in love with God. So a lot of entrepreneurs out there, very driven like myself. A lot of leaders out there, very driven. They're hungry or hangry, as you would say. Now, what is some advice that you would give to them right now that you would say, hey, this is what I believe God is really sharing with me, with you, to want me to share with you today? inspire you, that would encourage you, that would help you become a better leader? Rise to the top right now in your spirit.
Yeah, I think that you're a leader because you were good at evaluating your environment and evaluating people. And leaders are generally, if we're not careful as leaders, we're always looking at how we need to correct things. And of course, that's an important part of being a leader. But just like in our faith, in business, if all you're doing is seeing what's wrong with people and you never go to what's right with them, you're going to be half a leader. And I like to say it like this, and I didn't coin this phrase. I heard it somewhere. I don't even remember where, but I think all of us leaders need to be about finding the gold in people. That's GOLD. Everybody's got gold. Everybody's got a treasure. Every person on earth, because we were created by the Creator and have His DNA in us, we have gold, some kind of greatness that is waiting to be called out. And I think if you can start seeing your people, not just in a corrective way or instructional way, but asking God to help you see the gold already in them and tell them about it. Now you're going to wake up some people in a way you've never seen.
Wow, that's some serious fire right there, Bill. To wrap this up today, man, I wish I was advanced more in my podcast. I could have some sound effects and get the choir singing in the background. But so true. I mean, and even myself, I've been guilty of that. We somehow think we're God's police, or we think we're the police of everybody's behavior, and we default, to the critic. And I think a lot of that too, correct me if I'm wrong real quickly as we wrap up today, but I think a lot of that is based out of because we haven't fully received that love of the Father, right?
Amen.
Kindness. And a lot of times we want to criticize other people or police other people to make ourselves feel better. Have you seen that?
Absolutely. I think it's hard to call out the gold in others if you've never seen the gold in you.
That's so good. Well, listen, my friend, this has been fire, pun intended. I really sitting with you. I love the way you articulate things. I love meeting other believers who are and want to lead others. And it's not a title, it's not a position, but it's just truly living on purpose in such a way that you want to bring glory to God in your life while making a massive impact in the lives of others. I know you're doing that with coaches and athletes in your space. And listen, as we close today, if you're watching this, once again, I pray that something that Bill and I discussed today puts fresh wind in your sails. That's my terminology, because this world will suck the wind out of you really, really quickly.
That's right.
Yeah, I promise you this, and I'm not trying to be preachy today, but it's who I am, that I have found no better source of fresh wind than in the love of the Father, as Bill and I say, that He is for you, that He wants a relationship with you, and it's as simple. We make this thing complicated because we're humans, but it's waving the white flag of surrender today in your car, at home, or wherever you're listening or watching this, and you're saying, God, here are the keys to the kingdom. I'm giving you my yes today.
That's good. Amen.
That knowing that would compel you to not do life the same after you listen to this podcast. Once again, Bill, thanks for being on. And I just want to say to all of you, God bless you guys. Thank you for watching today. Thank you for listening today, and make it an awesome day.